What is up, everybody? This is Chase, and welcome back to the Wellness Center podcast, where we are destigmatizing mental health one episode at a time. Thank you so much for tuning in. It means the world to me and my guests when you come on here and hear their wonderful stories of resilience through their hardships, their trials, and to ultimately listen to the lessons and skills that every one of my guests has to teach you. So make sure to tune into the full episode. Now, if you're not already a part of the Wellness Center tribe, please make sure to like and subscribe, right? My goal right now is 500 subscribers on YouTube. I currently have about 112, so the goal is to get to 500. So if you haven't already, please make sure to share these episodes with your friends and family. Share these lessons, share these skills, help lift everybody up and destigmatize mental health with me. The goal again is 500 subscribers. I know if we work together, we can do it. So hit that subscribe button, hit that like button, hit that share button, and let's make it happen, everyone. So without further ado, I want to bring on my phenomenal guest today, guys. My guest, she is a freaking rock star, outstanding in her field, outstanding through her resilience, and I am so excited to introduce her today. So without further ado, my guest is the owner and founder of the Be Better Utah Foundation. It's a 501c3 nonprofit meant to dismantle the barriers to accessible mental health care in Utah. She is also a mental health advocate and clinic owner in Bountiful, Utah. She has a resilient personal journey from overcoming challenges as a teenage and single mom with a children's father, a former Marine who struggled with addiction, has been absent for over 12 years. She had a career transition when she retired from a career in service and took a mini retirement and moved up to Utah, only to find her niche in mental health and a passionate dog lover. She has a few fur babies that she is so passionate about. So guys, without further ado, I have the one and the only Haley Estelle on the show.
It's gonna be a fine day today, I can see. It's gonna be a fine day today, I can see. Gonna be a fine day today for you and me.
Haley, how are you doing?
Hey, Chase. Good. How are you?
Good. I am doing outstanding. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you so much for coming on the show today. I really appreciate your time.
Yeah, of course. Thank you for inviting me. I'm really excited to be here.
Yeah, absolutely. I can imagine with the new nonprofit that you're doing and your mental health clinic that you're opening up in Bountiful, I believe the clinic is, right?
Yep, correct.
Yeah, I can imagine you are swamped
A
nowadays.
little bit. Yeah.
That's awesome. Well, Haley, just so the followers and the people listening can get to know you a little bit better, will you just give us some cookie cutter answers as to who you are and what you're all about?
Sure, of course. So my name is Haley. Obviously, you've said that. And my husband and I do own Ellie Mental Health in Bountiful, Utah. We opened that clinic up about a year ago, just over a year ago. And through our experience there, sort of came up with the idea to start the Be Better Utah Foundation, which is devoted to making sure that everybody has access to mental health. So right now we fundraise to help pay for therapy for those in need. Yeah, I've got two kids. They're grown. They are 20 and 22. They moved out. Gosh, I know. In 2020, my son moved out, and in 2021, my daughter moved out. Both just turned 18, and they were like, we're off to see the world, and they've been doing that ever since. So yeah, and then we've adopted these three beautiful fur babies. So I am a dog mom, a real mom, and extremely passionate about mental health, kind of based on my own journey through my own trials and tribulations, and then yeah, getting to reach out to the community here and make some substantial changes and give opportunity for healing kind of throughout the whole state is the goal. So that's a little bit about me in a nutshell.
That's super cool. So with the nonprofit, the Be Better Utah Foundation, is there like a specific mental health crisis that you're trying to fight, like depression or anxiety, bipolar, anything like that? Or is it anyone who needs mental health help?
It truly is anyone who needs help. We're not diagnosis based. You don't even have to have a therapist. It's my goal, like in a perfect world to me, we're reaching people before the crisis. And I think what we see now in the industry is people wait until the crisis has come, and sort of beat them upside the head with a brick. And then they're like, oh gosh, I don't know what I'm doing. My hope is by creating an environment where mental health is accessible, therapy services or other services related to mental health is accessible, we can get to somebody before it gets to the crisis mode. And yeah, the biggest one, of course, is loss of life, and nobody wants to see that or experience that. So we really will take anybody. And part of this is creating some comfort. That first phone call to a therapist is usually the hardest, not wanting to ask somebody. And in some cases, it's easier to talk to a stranger. So with me, I have people call and say, I'm going through it. Can you help? And then I do my best to connect the dots. The fact that we own the clinic and we're in the industry, I have a lot of resources to pull from to make those connections and get people the help that they need. So hopefully that answers your question. But yeah, I think everybody needs a therapist or something, whether they're in a crisis or not, so yeah.
Yeah, I absolutely agree with you. I think, I heard this statement once from Tony Robbins that he said that your thoughts and you and the way you communicate with yourself is what you have for your entire life, right? Whether you ended early or whether you live a long life. So learning how to communicate with yourself healthily is like super paramount. And I love that you're trying to address it before the crisis happens, which I think that's so, so important. So thank you. And I can tell there's some deep rooted stuff here that's kind of caused all of this. So
Oh, sure.
Haley, let's go right into it. So take us back to a young Haley Estelle. When were some of the first times that you noticed you were struggling with your mental health?
Yeah, so gosh, you can take it way back if you want to. So my kids were young, and their dad, who had served honorably in the Marine Corps, was discharged and went on a mental health journey. And I wasn't as aware as I am now, obviously. I mean, this is, gosh, almost 20 years ago.
Mhm.
And he became a heroin addict, and he sort of just disappeared. So, I mean, to this day, we haven't really heard or seen him in over 12 years. So that is when I started to really go into survival mode. When he left, he stopped paying child support. I lost my house. I was making too much money to qualify for state benefits, but not enough money to pay for like the health insurance coverage at my work. So it was this really weird space. So I needed the help, couldn't get the help. And sort of just barreled through, like bare knuckled, kept myself as busy as possible and made sure that me and my kids were okay. So that was a while ago. It wasn't until 2018, so probably 10 years later, that I was finally like, you know what? We need to do something. And I'm done trying to work my way through my employer provided programs and insurance. And so I hopped on Yelp. I had just gotten out of another relationship that did not end well, and was just at the end of my rope going like, there has got to be something better. And I need help to figure out what that is, because this is not the life I want to lead, nor is it the example I want for my children. And so in 2018, I found my therapist. I have been with her ever since. So she's an incredible practitioner. She's based out of Phoenix. And yeah, she's been fabulous through everything. In 2021, that's when we moved here to Utah from Arizona. That was probably the biggest early sign of a struggle, because by this point I'd been in therapy for quite a while, right? And everything's sort of smooth sailing. And we got here and I left. It was such a huge life transition. I left all of my friends and family to move to a new state. My daughter moved out shortly after we got here to exercise her independence. I quit my job, my career of public servitude, which I loved and still love, obviously. I live in service to the public still to this day. And gosh, it was a lot. It was like I already am in therapy and we're doing EMDR and we're doing DBT. Like, what else is there? And I held on to that for about a year until I finally spoke up to one of my close friends and said, I'm really a little bit afraid of how I'm feeling. Like, I don't like this level of depression. I've struggled with depression almost my entire life. It's always just kind of in the back of my mind, but this was real and it was scary. And talking to her and learning like she had also struggled with that and had gotten help, and she went the medical route and got on antidepressants, but it opened up a world of research for me. And so also having kind of somebody in my corner who is like this strong female presence who I had no idea was struggling with this was like, girl, me too. Let me like give you some advice. And so that started me down the path of kind of looking at what else I could do to supplement my talk therapy. I did try antidepressants. It didn't work. well, for me, it did lead me on this beautiful path to meeting Laura, right? And she introduced me to red light therapy at the Wellness Center. And that is what really kicked off my dedication to mindfulness and meditation and other things that could help supplement what I was doing in therapy. And you all introduced me to the idea of ketamine assisted therapy, which I did January of last year. And I'm proud to say that I almost want to cry thinking about it. Like for the last year and a half, my symptoms of anxiety, depression, and complex PTSD are nearly non-existent. And when those things, thank you. When those things do come up, I feel so much more well-equipped to handle them. And that is, being super self-aware of my behaviors and when I need to take a break and really listening to myself and my body and what I need and not pushing. I'm not in survival mode anymore, is where my mind and my body is kind of settling and having a hard time transitioning into. It's okay to rest and relax. And yeah, so the Wellness Center and you guys there were truly life-changing. I went on an actual meditation, mindfulness backpacking trip right after my ketamine treatments were done, and did that solo, drove all the way to Huntington Beach and back by myself in our van and let the integration happen. And so that has put me on a real path. So that's 2022. What are we in now? 2024?
Yeah, 2024.
Yeah, so I've been cruising ever since.
That's amazing. Congratulations. Yeah. What a powerful journey. Like what an amazing show of resilience. That's truly awesome, Haley. So I have a lot of questions for you kind of about your story. So let's dig into it. So, early on, how old were you around the time your husband left?
Oh gosh. It's a little tough because I don't remember that far back. I want to say this is 2008.
About 2008. Okay.
Yeah, so however old I just celebrated
we don't need
listen, it's the 15th anniversary of my 25th birthday was recently celebrated. So
we don't need to date you at all either.
But that was 2008.
My mom always taught me never ask a woman her age, so I apologize. But
no, you're good.
How old were your kids around that time?
So they were about 8 and 10.
8 and 10. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
And were there any signs once your former husband got out of the military, the Marines, were there any signs that he was starting to go down a bad path?
Looking back, even with what I know now, no. Men in particular, and then those who are in the military tend to put on a front, right? There's a stoicism about that, and that is culture, right?
Absolutely.
And so there were no signs at all. In fact, I left him for a totally different reason, and the addiction didn't come out until about 6 months later. Yeah, that's a great question. But no, he didn't ask for help, and he didn't say anything was wrong. So yeah, to answer your question, no.
No, that's good to know. Yeah, and I know you went through so much stuff, and you mentioned too, one thing that really stuck out to me is that you've been struggling with depression from like a really early on, from the time you were young.
Sure.
Can you tell us a little bit more about that?
Yeah, so I didn't even realize I had been struggling with it until I found the therapist in 2018. And in speaking with her and sort of getting to know myself and why I am the way that I am, sort of turned a light bulb on that, holy moly, like this anxiety that you're feeling and this panic that you have and this constant hyper awareness, like hyper vigilant kind of vibe that I carry around with me is because I've been dealing with this really since I was a child. We did not grow up in a happy, healthy home. It was really tough growing up, and you didn't talk about it. You didn't talk about how you were feeling if you were having a rough day or a bad day, or if your feelings were hurt, or if something wasn't going right. That wasn't not a welcome discussion. And so, yeah, in 2018 was a big year. We unpacked a lot of stuff and shed a lot of light on some behaviors that I just didn't realize were tied to things that weren't necessarily even my fault. Trauma response is a big thing that comes to mind. And my way of dealing with it was to stay busy at all times. I coached all of my kids' sports activities. I volunteered at the Humane Society with the dogs. I made sure that I was just always on the go, plans all the time. I never took an opportunity to just sit with myself and feel and live in that anxiety or that depression to explore why or how we get out of it. It was, yeah.
Hey, your sound cut out.
Oh,
Oh, okay, you're back.
I'm back now.
You are
Hi,
back. Hi.
I'm sorry about that.
No, it's fine. That's why we have editing.
Great. So where did we leave off? What did you last hear?
We were talking about some of the anxiety and the PTSD that you wouldn't sit with because, yeah, you stayed busy.
I stayed busy. That is how I dealt with it. Dealt with it by ignoring it,
Mhm.
and just not really realizing it was a thing. I had been sort of conditioned not to talk about it,
Yeah.
and didn't even know it was a thing. And there's a whole idea around depression that's shameful. And I'm glad to see us culturally kind of moving away from that. But yeah, that was the time. That was a decade or more ago. Different
Yeah.
times for sure.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you for sharing, and thank you for feeling safe and comfortable enough to like open up about that. I know that that's not easy to
Oh,
unpack at any time. So I really appreciate it. And I really resonate with the need to stay busy so you don't sit with yourself. Like I can tell you there's so many times I've been talking with friends and family and my wife, and I would just say, you know what, I have to have like music playing or something going on because I just can't sit in my brain.
right.
So what was the fear for you, right? If you were to not have anything going on, what was the fear?
The fear would be in confronting the issues. Does that make sense?
Mhm.
Um, Acknowledging that there's something wrong with you was sort of the reel that would play in my mind. And I've got two young kids. I'm going about it all by myself. I need to be strong. I need to be put together. I just need to be the very best. And I didn't ever want there to be an impression that I didn't have it all together, which is such a thing now. And actually, as we're talking, I'm realizing that was me, I had
Yeah.
to be the super mom. And so I didn't want to confront it. I didn't want to go down a path. I didn't know how to navigate. I am pretty confident in all the endeavors I take on. Self-work at the time, no, thank you. I'm super good.
No, that makes a lot of sense. And thank you. I know there are so many women that are going to listen to this episode and just be like, I think I'm the super mom too. And like they're going to have you to connect with. So that's awesome, Haley. Thank you so much. So, and I think a lot of this leads perfectly into my next question, which is the heroine's journey. So for those listening, the heroine's journey is essentially an extreme moment, a pivotal trial, an undertaking that the heroine has to take in order to become better. So Haley, can you please describe for us your heroine's journey?
Ah, the heroine's journey. You want the full story?
I do want the full story.
I mean, my whole life's motivation for at least the last 20 years was my children. And that was what I strived to make sure was taken care of,
Mhm.
that I could, do the hard things to make sure that they didn't have to do the hard things. Whether that was working extra hard to get my master's degree so that I could get the job that got the raise that paid for the house. And I think, gosh, heroine's journey, that's a really interesting term. Because I think the biggest thing that I did was ask for help when I needed it. And that didn't come until much later. And that's the hardest thing sometimes to do. I don't know why I'm getting so emotional, but I am. Is not just looking others in the face, but looking yourself in the face and saying, I can't do this by myself and I need to ask for help. And to me, I mean, that was truly life-saving. It was genuinely a life-saving moment when it was like, I need to say something to somebody,
Yeah,
to bring in other heroes and heroines to help me, right?
absolutely. Yeah.
And so that's kind of the culmination of that journey, was learning that one, it's okay to not be okay. And two, you have to ask for help. Not just it's okay to ask for help. You have to ask for help when you need it. Everybody needs it at some point. You're not on an island. And for a long time, I lived on an island and finally busted through and was like, this is not okay. I am not okay. I need somebody to help me. And sharing these stories, the reason I'm so open is that it helps other people share their stories. And even if they aren't vocalizing them, in front of tens of dozens of thousands of people or whatever, the opportunity for them to speak up to somebody, even if it's just one person, to ask for help. I've seen that sharing vulnerability helps other people be vulnerable, and that's kind of the first step to healing.
Yeah, is knowing that you're normal, right?
Right.
Is the thoughts and feelings that you hear and see are same as everyone else.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
love that.
Yeah.
So thank you for sharing that part of your heroine's journey. What were some of the moments that led up to I need help and I'm not okay?
Yeah. You know, I in 2021, when I was confiding in my friend, up to that point, I sort of led with this, like, I have everything figured out. I've been in therapy for 5 years, so on and so forth. We were in Barcelona, Spain, and we're sitting on the beach, and I'm like not having a good time on the beach in Barcelona. Like, what is going on? And realize at that point, I need to say something to somebody about this. It was sort of a little light bulb again went on. It was like, I should be having the best time of my life, and I'm not. And I don't think that it's anything that I've done wrong. There's something else happening. So there was that. And the antidepressants, and anybody who's listening to this, I don't discourage medication management in any way, shape, or form. I just encourage everybody to really do the research on it before going down that path. For me, the weaning off of the antidepressants in 2022 led to suicidal ideation, which was very scary. And it was so hard. I'll never forget. It's like the day of my 39th birthday party. And I go to my husband and I'm like, this is not, like, I can't do this. There's something wrong. And I need somebody to do something right now. And he called Laura, your mom. And she called me almost immediately. And I went in to see you right away at the red light center. And the sense of community that was created was incredible. It was like I've found two total strangers who have no idea who I am or what I've been through, who just welcomed me with open arms and again set me on a totally new path to learning about myself and figuring out what works. But moving, I don't even know how to. It's like you have a ball in your chest before you ask. It's like a weight. It's like you've got a bowling ball sitting on your chest until you can verbalize, like, I actually need help right now, immediately. And that helped tremendously. And actually, that experience led me to create a crisis intervention plan. And so I have sort of a phone tree, which I haven't needed in a really long time, but I make one phone call and it activates 3 or 4 or 5 of my closest friends. And they all have specific instructions on what needs to happen. And they have been there for me. I think I've used it 1 or 2 times, but yeah, it started the conversation amongst our friends as well. So,
Which is awesome, right? Spreading that awareness is so important.
right.
So, oh, wow, what an amazing story. Thank you so much. It's very powerful, right? And it's so true and it's so honest. So you get to this point, your husband calls my mom, and thank you for the awesome shout out there, by the way. So your husband calls, and how did he find her number? I'm actually curious.
You know, we have a friend who has a friend who went to Laura in a time of crisis. So that friend was just, he had sort of been along the ride with us through my journey of these antidepressants and getting off of antidepressants and some of our very best friends, and was just like, it might be a good idea just to have this person's phone number. I don't even know the name of the friend, if I'm being honest. And Steve just happened to save that number, and he acted right away, which is funny because he doesn't always like do the things I ask him to do, and I ask him to do it. But in this case, he was on top of it and really, yeah. That's how we found you. I mean, everybody knows you guys. So
my mom is a very popular person in Utah. If you're not familiar with Laura Warburton, you are now. But no, cool. So you get to this point, you get to the wellness center, you do this red light therapy, you start to make this shift in your life. What happens then?
what happens then?
Yeah.
Oof. Well, I keep going to the wellness center to red light therapy.
Mhm.
And actually, you and the other staff who work there are so great. Yeah, every time I got done with a treatment, it's, how are you feeling? And then we would go into in-depth conversations about what life was like right now. But red light really kind of helped settle my system and almost gave me some confidence in like, this is okay, and slowing down and taking things one step at a time. At the time, we had just opened the clinic, or we're just about to open. I feel like maybe we were just about to open. High stress. Have we hired the right people? Have we done enough advertising? And yeah, that sort of set me down in calmness, mindfulness. Mindfulness, I'd been taught in 2018, it's part of my therapy. DBT, dialectic behavior therapy, involves mindfulness. But it's almost like I had the space. My system had settled enough that I had the space to sit and meditate. And I would meditate when I got there. As you recall, I have driving anxiety. And so I would drive and I'd be scared and I'd be like, I can't relax, Chase, can I have 20 minutes? And so I would meditate when I got there and continue down that, and have really tried to make it a habit every day of spending a little bit of quiet time with myself, what I avoided so wholeheartedly for so long, to check in and to say, is today a rest day? Is today a productive day? Like, what do we need? What's going to make this day a good day? Or is it going to be a bad day? And that's fine too. Yeah. So then in talking with you and with Laura, got introduced to the ketamine assisted therapy and went up to Therapy Reset in South Ogden. And gosh, was that scary.
So
Really scary.
for those
Yeah.
just listening, Therapy Reset is a clinic that does ketamine infusement therapy. So sorry, keep going. So you're scared, you're terrified to do
I'm
ketamine.
so scared, but I did it, and I did it for six weeks, once a week. And let me be really honest, those 6 weeks were really hard. That's when I activated my crisis helpline, my personal crisis intervention plan, and had to make some calls to friends. And it really lights up a lot of stuff and helps sort of clean out the junk and gives you an opportunity to approach the things that maybe you've been avoiding or don't know are there. And gets you out of that rut, right? Your brain actually makes ruts. I'm sure that you've talked about this on your podcast and neuroplasticity and all of that. But giving yourself the opportunity to practice when your brain is sort of in that malleable form, and create the new pathways and get on a good path. It did take a little while for integration. I think it was about 6 weeks later when I felt confident enough to go on that road trip by myself and do the meditation backpacking trip. And I've learned so much about ketamine assisted therapy since then. There's not just infusion, there's injection, there's troches, there's assisted, there's unassisted. We're actually exploring those offerings at our clinic in Bountiful now because it made such a huge impact on my life. Yeah, so that was last year. And this past year, I've just sort of been doing great. I go to therapy once a month, sometimes twice a month, depending on what needs to happen. And yeah.
That's powerful. And I think you touched on so many amazing little things, right? Like you talked about meditating more often so you could be aware of oneself. You practiced rigorous acceptance if, it's going to be a productive day, a non-productive day, a rest day, or a bad day. And like you're okay with that. So there's like self-love in there too. So I think a lot of what you talked about there and going to the therapy once or twice a month, a lot of those are really beautiful skills. So I'd love to formally bring in that question of like, what skills did you develop and how have they evolved up to this point in your life?
Yeah. So I think one of the biggest skills, it goes back to what you were saying that Tony Robbins said, is that negative self-talk. That's a pathway. That's a pathway in your brain. And for me, that started in childhood. But through all of these things that I've sort of introduced into my life and into my well-being, I don't do that anymore. It's no longer a habitual conversation I'm having, beating myself up every day. Sometimes I do. There are days, especially with the development of the nonprofit. I am not a web designer, but I tried so hard to build a website and would find myself in tears saying like, why can't I do this? Like, what is wrong with me? It's like, take a step back. Previously, I wouldn't have been able to take a step back. I would have kept down that path and given up and thrown the whole thing away. What I notice now is like, chill, like take a beat. You're not a web designer. Like we need to talk about the return on investment. with the website so that you're not going into this pattern, right? So the negative self-talk is more or less gone away. It does take active practice. It does take self-awareness to know when I'm doing it. It's never okay, in my opinion. Back in the day, some of the things I would say to myself, I would never let anybody say to my kid. And that is sort of how I frame it now. You know, would I let my daughter talk to herself like this, or let somebody else talk to her like this? Like, absolutely not. It's okay. So that was a huge skill. The other thing, and maybe this is from red light and force, you know, you're still in the pod for a little while, is learning to listen, right? I kept myself so busy for so long. I never gave myself the opportunity to listen to what it is that I needed, and whether that's mind or body. And now I listen to my body. So let's rewind to when I had a career in architecture and engineering, really high, fast-paced environment. I worked in transportation, so highways, freeways, roadways, rail. And I was working 60, 80 hours a week and was absolutely burning myself out, but I was so productive. Produce. Fast forward 2021, quit my job, get here, start the clinic, and I'm no longer filling my week with 60 or 80 hours of productivity. And I sort of would freak out about that, but now it's like, you know what? My ideal workday is 6 hours with an hour of resting in the middle of that. So at 1 o'clock almost every day, I'm taking a 45-minute rest, whether it's a nap or just a meditation or just kind of chilling. And that has helped tremendously. If I don't do that, I have to start paying attention to what my body is telling me. So that kind of self-awareness is huge. And then being compassionate with myself when I fall off of that wagon, right? Like it's okay that you did a full 10-hour day today. You don't need to feel bad about it, or the opposite of that. My husband, he goes and goes and goes all day, every day. I start to feel bad. I can't keep up with him. And that's where that self-compassion skill comes in. Like, he is not you. You are not him. You're on a different journey and have different needs, and it's okay to do what you need to do. So those are a few more. And I will continue to say asking for help is a skill I did not have 10 years ago that I practice regularly now in work life, in personal life. I just can't say that enough. You know, everybody's going through something, and there are people who want to help, and it's okay to ask for help. It doesn't make me any less of a person, right? That was the big thing. Like, you don't need help. If you're asking for help, there's something wrong with you. That's not true. So those are some of the skills. Yeah, it's been an incredible journey, and I'm forever grateful for having those skills developed. Not only that, that I'm able to share those skills primarily with my kids. I'm always worried about them. As parents, we always are. But the journey that I've been on, and all of these ups and downs and lefts and rights, and figuring out how to make life work for me, lets me have conversations with my kids that allow them to be who they are and come to me when they need help, and not putting so much pressure on them for being productive and being perfect and all. Like, it's okay to mess up. Like, I literally exist to help you through this. Everything I've been through is to teach you. Whether they use it or not is up to them. But that's just a really incredible thing I've taken away. Because you can be hard on yourself, you know, you can be real hard on yourself for not having it together. But once you figure it out, it gives you a story to tell and something to share with somebody who you probably don't know needs to hear it. And that is huge. Yeah, like my girlfriend that I spoke to in 2021 about how I was feeling. I didn't know that she would be open to receiving that, and she was, and she became a catalyst for what turned into sort of this hunt for eliminating depression. But yeah.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
Thank you for sharing all those skills. All so powerful, so simple, and so true. I'm curious about kind of the origins of some of these skills that you've practiced, right? Like, I know you talked about like positive affirmations, good self-talk. Were they like mantras that you would use like when they first started, or did you have to force yourself to say I love you? Like, what were some of the things that you had to like actively work on like when you started positive self-talk?
Sure. Yeah, journaling was a big piece for me. And I'm not as good at journaling as I wish I was. I don't, like, I'm not going to judge myself for not journaling every day, but I don't. In the beginning, no. When I really dedicated myself to like stopping that reel of negative self-talk, I would use affirmations. Actually, I have affirmations for happiness sitting on my desk, so I can refer to it, but I would write them down a lot. And that would be the start of my day. Now through the past year or so, I found music that has positive affirmations. There's an artist, her name is Toni Jones, and her music is incredibly affirming in all walks of life, from work to money to relationships to just being yourself. I also practice yoga fairly regularly, and at the end of the practice, there is an affirmation piece. But yes, sorry, to get started, it was a lot of writing down affirmations, even getting on Pinterest and being like, what's an affirmation?
Yeah.
Because at the time it was like, I don't know what this is or how to do it. Now, I didn't spend a lot of time talking to myself in the mirror that some people will do. I didn't do a lot of that. For me, pen to paper seems to stick better. And so that's kind of how I started, until I don't have to really do it anymore. It just sort of is part of every day. That's kind of how it has ingrained itself. It's like, you're doing great. Like, even when I mess something up, like, okay, today's not the day for that. You are still awesome. So it just comes out. I don't even have to try anymore, but it wasn't easy. When you're uncomfortable with yourself at first, the affirmations are uncomfortable. And oftentimes, like, looking back, again, I'm getting emotional about this. Well, you're bringing it all out today, Chase. Looking back, there were days when I just didn't want to write anything down because I didn't believe it. It wasn't true,
Yeah.
And so the hard work of forcing yourself through, instead of maybe 10 times you write it down, it's 3 times and I'm out, I'm good. But that practice and that repetition made it more comfortable, and every time made it more true. Until now, here we are a year or a year and a half later. And this is fairly new for me. I mean, this negative self-talk track has stopped fairly recently. So it's been 18 months in the making of trial and error and figuring out what works. Now I have a routine that I don't even realize, as I'm speaking to you, incorporates the affirmation at the end of yoga, or incorporates the, hey, you messed up this document, but girl, it's okay. You're going to try it again tomorrow. And if you can't do it, guess what? Ask for help. So that's how it started. That's how it's going. Some days are better than others, but that ability to forgive oneself, right, is huge.
Yeah, absolutely. And, just a little side note here. At the start of the podcast, you said this phrase, girl, me too, right? When you were talking about your friend. I think you should coin that and patent that and make that like your brand. I think that'd be so powerful.
Yeah, that's a great idea. Actually, I'm going to write that down, because I mean, it's real. It's a real thing.
Yeah, girl, me too. But no, it's so cool. And the self-grace, right? The grace for oneself. How did that evolve over time?
Really putting that frame of my daughter around myself. This is so funny. I love her so incredibly much. But talking to myself as I would talk to her, being able to realize, I don't know how familiar you are with therapy practices, but there is a modality called internal family systems, or IFS. It's called
I'm
parts
familiar.
work. Yeah, parts work. So I recognize that there are parts of myself, younger parts, who've been through things, who need to be lifted up and held and protected. And gosh, the fact that I have a daughter, and this is so relatable, I'm able to apply that to myself. And that is where the self-forgiveness comes in. Once I started adding, like, would this be okay if my daughter was saying this? That helped reframe and go, no. So stop saying it to yourself. You wouldn't say this to your best friend. You wouldn't say this to your kid. You wouldn't say this to your partner. Why are you saying it to yourself? At the end of the day, you are who you have to live with for the rest of your life. Be nice to you. Be nice to you. And so framing it around speaking to a child, that's kind of what IFS does, right? You go back in time and you find your little part and you talk to it and coddle it and make it feel better. I do that to myself all day. Just otherwise, gosh, I would not be here right now talking to you. I'd be napping upstairs. So,
That reminds me, have you ever heard of a book called The Dark Side of the Light Chasers by Debbie Ford?
no.
I would highly recommend listening to that book. It's meditations and everything, all very similar to that, right? It's like for her, it's meeting your higher self and your lowest self, talking to your sub personalities is what she calls them, right? Those parts of you
Beautiful.
that you've denied. So yeah, it's all very similar to IFS. But no, that's super cool. So Haley, obviously you're thriving at this point in your life, right? You're doing so good. You haven't had to use your crisis lines for a while. You're doing some amazing things. Looking back at this entire journey that you've been on, what can you appreciate about what you've been through?
Oh, the thing I appreciate the most is being able to share my story with those that are closest to me and complete strangers, you and your mom, but also helping me understand the people around me. I've always been an empathetic person, but having been through what I've been through, it helps me relate to others. It helps me to understand what they may or may not need. It helps me to, yeah, give them a space to feel safe because you know what? I've been through it and I'm still going through it. Like healing doesn't end. My therapist just told me this like 6 months ago, and I'm like, what do you mean? We're going to be working on this forever. But it really is gosh, I'm not even 100% confident in everything that I do every day, but that's okay. And I love being able to tell people that and to say, like, it's okay to not be on your best, but also understanding that mindset that they get into. Does that make sense?
Mhm.
Right?
Yeah,
The trials and tribulations of others, I can relate to, and then hopefully be a catalyst for change for them.
yeah, that's amazing. Thank you so
Yeah,
much.
of course.
And so my last question for you, for those just getting into the realm of mental health, what advice do you have specifically for those people?
So first and foremost, I would say don't give up. Those who are looking for a therapist who haven't found one, keep trying. And if you're still struggling, all of my contact information is available on the internet at bebetterutah.org. That is my life's work, really, is connecting people with a therapist who works for them. Even if somebody connects with a therapist and it doesn't work, keep trying, try others. Find therapists who offer a consultation call or a free fit call, whether it's 15 minutes or a half an hour. Sometimes that eliminates the barrier and you can get started right away. The other thing is therapy isn't for everyone, right? There are other means and methods of getting into the mental health realm of things and getting into healing, whether that's through yoga or meditation or trying new hobbies or finding a group to share with who has some commonalities, workshops, retreats. I will always default to licensed therapy. It changed my life. It's changed the life of many people around me. It's not for everybody, and that's okay. Just don't give up. Just keep at it. And if you feel like giving up, that's where we come back to asking for help. There are people like me, Chase, Laura, the Wellness Center. We're here for it. Our experience helps guide others to some healing. That's what we're here for. So don't give up. Keep going. Find what works.
That's great advice, Haley. Thank you so much. And thank you
Yeah.
for coming on my show today and sharing all parts of you, of the show. We listened to the good parts by Andy Grammer right before this. So no, thank you. Thank you for sharing. You're an amazing person. So for those people that want to know and get in contact with you a little bit more, can you tell us a little bit more about the Be Better Foundation and Ellie?
Yeah, of course. So the Be Better Utah Foundation is bebetterutah.org. We're on Instagram at Be Better Utah Foundation and Facebook at Be Better Utah. We will take applications for folks that need assistance in finding a therapist and paying for therapy. We also accept donations of any amount. I can tell you average cost of one therapy session is $125. My goal this year is to raise $250,000, which will fund 2,000 therapy sessions for people in need. Drop in the bucket, but it's a starting off point. The Be Better Utah Foundation, will be building and growing. I've got scholarships planned for licensed therapists to continue their education. I've got scholarships planned for master's level education. We've got community building that's going to happen in outreach and workshops, and hopefully a Be Better Utah community garden here in Salt Lake County. So that's all coming down the pipes. Ellie Mental Health is our clinic that is located in Bountiful at 500 and 500, right across from Costco, if you're familiar. We've actually grown our team exponentially. We've got 9 providers of all different backgrounds. Yes, right? Who would have thought a year ago we'd be almost at full staff? And we offer telehealth therapy. We offer in-person. We are going to be offering groups and pretty soon ketamine-assisted therapy as well at our clinic. So that's elliementalhealth.com/Bountiful, Utah. That's our location. So yeah, that's us in a nutshell.
Haley, congratulations. That success is well earned and well deserved.
Thank you.
So
Thanks.
yeah, and again, one more time, thank you so much for coming on the show. I really appreciate it, guys. If you want to get in contact with Haley and her practices and her nonprofits, all of that stuff is going to be in the description below. So please make sure to go and check out what she's doing, because obviously she's changing lives for the better. Now, guys, thank you so much for tuning in up to this point. If you've listened to the end, I am so truly grateful that you tuned in with us and listened to this whole story. It means the world to me. It means the world to Haley. So thank you guys so much. If you haven't already, please make sure to like and subscribe to whatever platform you're on. And if you haven't, I invite you to share this with someone you know that could benefit from the stories that Haley shared with us today. Guys, if you want to come on the podcast, just understand that no story is too big and no name is too small. If you do have a story, I want to share it all, please contact me at chase@thewellnesscenter.life. And one more time, it's chase@thewellnesscenter.life. If you want to know more about what I do on my day-to-day, go to www.thewellnesscenter.life, where red light therapy rejuvenates every cell in your body, one session at a time. Again, thank you so much for tuning in, guys. I hope you have a great rest of your day, and we'll see you on the flip side. Peace out.